Hi, I'm Fran with Stampendous, and I'm talking about frontage today. And this is a word that I made up to describe this look of shabby chic and faded things and old papers. And the fun of it is, been so inspired to go to the vintage marketplace craft shows. They're outdoors down at the Oaks, and it is so fun. And I came back and I thought, how can I use my stamps and embossing powder and the coffee spritzing and have all of that come together to give you this beautiful look? And instead of having to buy the antique papers, create them yourselves. So all of these things and the techniques I show you will help you make a Stampendous impression every time. The frontage look that I've developed was a result of many interesting things like the shabby chic look and old vintage papers and letters, and they just have such a wonderful feel to them. And sometimes to all of these pretty things with glitter and pastel colors and crowns, all of these things are so interesting. And the feel of the old papers and the textures is a lot of the fun of the whole look of it. I went down to the vintage marketplace at the Oaks, which is a wonderful craft show featuring all sorts of vintage kinds of things. And they have it a couple times a year, and it's outside in a beautiful area down there near Fallbrook, California. And when I came back from that, it inspired me to do more cards and tags and journals that had this whole look of the shabby chic kind of vintage thing that I now enjoy calling frontage, as I've developed my own style with it. And we'll take a quick look through here to give you a preview. You can see the photos that were taken at the show and all of the antique things like the bikes and all the interesting flowers and displays. And a couple of my art friends went along and we had a wonderful time. And so I made these little journals to kind of capture the fun of our going to the show. So as you can see, all of the things and the style of things that you're seeing in this journal, I'm going to show you how to create that look using maybe newer papers to make them look old. And we're going to use stamps and embossing powders and coffee and paint and all sorts of other fun papers to create this look. So we'll give you lots of tips as we go along. You'll see here that with this book, this one I punched holes and did a binding with the ribbon this way. Then I discovered that if I worked on my pages and then if you have access to a sewing machine, I was able to stitch through those 3 pages right down through the center seam, capturing the ribbon into the binding all at once. And that gave me a really nice option to tie it shut and keep any little treasures from falling out. So I will show you next how to develop all of these looks, and we'll start with the Creative Palette. The Creative Palette is our mono printing plate, which looks like this in the package, and when you take it out, it has an acetate liner on each side, and you pull that off to get started, and this gives you our lightweight, durable little printing plate that is just like they use for flexographic printing. And this one's been used repeatedly already, and I'm going to show you how you can print onto all sorts of papers and tags, envelopes, bags, all sorts of things to get a really interesting shabby chic look to your color scheme to get started. I've got my acrylic paints and a brayer and some bubble wrap, and we'll start in by applying some paints to the palette. Now we're going to take the fun papers that we might have done some printing on, and we're going to add some stamping. So depending on how familiar you are with our stamps, we have our wood-mounted stamps that are the deeply etched gray rubber, and other ones are the cling stamps that come in a package like this. And when you take them out of the package, they're on a liner of acetate, and this little cling sticker is what is needed so that your stamp will cling to a jumbo handle like this, and you can simply press that cling sticker in place and press it to make sure it's on nice and firm. And now you're ready to work with any of the stamps this way. Our other jumbo ones that come in the package like this have the image on them and simply cling to the handle as well. And some of the stamps have matching die sets, and some of the decorative patterns are available as a unique set now, which really ties in nicely with this look. So we're stamping on manila tags and tissue paper and newsprint and all of these things to get the aged look. Over here I took my heat tool and actually scorched the paper, which gives you an aged look. Other times you might do some whitewashing just with white acrylic paint. And one of my favorite things is to take instant coffee, and the granules will dissolve easily in some hot water. Fill up a little spritz bottle with it, and you can enjoy spritzing on any of your paper products. And the wetter you get and the longer it sits, the more interesting aged looks you'll get. And if you even sprinkle a bit more into the wet puddles, that will begin to dry and give you some very textured patterns as well. So over here, let's see, we've stamped on tissue paper, newsprint, and the thing is, sometimes you pay a lot of money to get old music sheets, but what if you can just take your newsprint and create your own as often as you need it and save the money that way? So I've stamped onto, manila folders are nice just for the color, and all of these things make a nice, interesting aged look. So let's take one of the pages that we did some of the mono printing on, and this has had time to dry now. So let's take our stamp and add some more imagery here. One of my favorite mediums is color pencil, and whichever brand, dry or aquarelle, you enjoy working with, I think it's a wonderful texture to enjoy doing the color pencils over the acrylic paint surfaces. And the nice thing about this look is that very minimal coloring is really what is the preferred soft color look, and a little bit of coloring and letting some of the other colors come through from the background paper is really all it takes. So keep your colors very light and just color in some little bits here and there. And I think that's one of the nice things about this look, that if you're wanting to make a card, most of your interest is coming from the pattern in the background, and very little coloring is going to finish off what you need to develop the flowers. So let's do just a little bit of some shadowing here and there. So take a look at this one, and you can really see the pinks in the background make it very interesting, and a little bit of coloring, sometimes a bit of shadowing on this one is what's really going to make it just pop off the page. You can darken some things, and then just that will enhance the light colors of the pinks. And if you have a medium tone paper, then your whites will really show up, and that gives it a really nice punch. And if you want, and you still have a bit of your paints out from doing the color painting, and printing in the background, you can always do a little bit of white paint to make the daisies really pop. Or over here I added some yellow paint, and just a light wash of it works out very nice. Another medium that is very helpful for this look are your chalks. And your decorative chalks on the little sponges are a really nice way to just add some very soft little bits of color here and there without getting too much pigment or too strong of a color palette. And it's interesting sometimes to have just little bits of another color coming into things. And you can use your sponges, or you can just get your fingers into it and begin to enhance some other areas of the page. And a little bit of smudging is going to give it an antique look. Even a bit of smudging of the browns is going to very quickly age your papers and make it a lot more vintage looking without taking over into some really strong colors. So let's just look at a couple of these pages where the flowers, and again I've shadowed them a little bit just to make them pop off the page. A little bit of shadowing under here is going to make it look like it's sitting on a tabletop, and you can add a bit more shading to just kind of give it a surface there. So these pages are open enough that you could come back in and do some journaling or develop some other ideas with your photos and just play off of these different things that will enhance this look. Here were some other colors that got a little bit deeper colors. Again, stamping off the edges gives you some nice open spaces in the middle, and just the soft, pretty colors or stamping in a light pink color give you a very nice look. So if you have your 3 pieces of paper that you've printed front and back, you can begin to arrange them all different ways to decide what order looks best to you to bind them into your little book. Here you can see the face stamp from the simplest stamping with really soft colors. This one I stamped over some newsprint look for the face and then did coloring in chalk on top of that. This one I stamped and then I used my acrylic paints to color in, and I might then do some of the hair with just some soft color pencils, and you can begin developing. Usually I start with the bangs. And you can keep going from there to develop the look that you want to finish things off. Or you can go crazy with all sorts of things as the hair, like you can see here. And even here with all the flowers that I stamped on top, a little bit of coloring around the edges developed the rest of the look. Now I want to do some basic embossing using some of our frontage embossing powders, which are wonderful mixes of numerous different colors and types of powders all together in the one jar. And one of my favorites is the aged silver, and that's what we're going to use here. So I'm going to want my Versamark ink. I'm going to ink up the dress form. And I'm going to do this right on the cover like we did on the other ones. So I'm going to overlap it right about here, press firmly. There it is, all shiny, and sometimes you get more black, sometimes more silver showing through. Each time may be a bit different. Now I want to show you how I'm going to add a bit of embossing powder on a corner, and this is what we refer to as the encrusted jewel technique. And since I want it a little bit right on the corner, I'm going to put just a little bit of the Versamark ink right at that outer edge. And besides the single jars of different colors, we also have some wonderful encrusted jewel kits where you get 5 different things in separate jars. The first 2 are usually the embossing powder, and then you get 3 other elements to go with it. So you have the choice of opening the jars and using it that way, or we now also have what we call our spoonful mix, and this one you pour out of the bag right into the work tray, and with my spoon it's now easy to sprinkle a bunch of this on that corner, and I can add other elements and things as well, either separately or from the kit of 5 there. Let's add just a little bit of gold here. This is some of the gold glass glitter. Okay, so I can sprinkle beyond where I had any ink because it's really only gravity that's going to hold it in place. And now this is important to heat from underneath. You can do a little shake test and see that the other glass glitters have been embedded into the embossing powder as it melts, giving you a beautiful splash of shine and color on the edge. Some other favorites among the frontage embossing powders are aged ivory, there's shabby blue, pink, and green, and white, and even the aged taupe is a really nice look with all of this. Aged silver, aged gold, and you can get them in that size jar, but you also get a very good value here with the 5-jar kit. This one is all embossing powders, and you can see we've melted them all out here so that you can see how they look when they're melted. This one is a whole expanse of the spoonful of silver, and if you want it to cover all the way out to the edges, you can coat the entire surface with the Versamark. These other encrusted jewel kits, this one is the silver, and there's also pink and gold, so you have lots of choices. Now let's take the little butterfly stamp and talk about some other beautiful embellishments that you can create. The stamp set has a matching die set, and so this little wafer die makes it very easy to just punch out a very nice shape, whether you're doing craft paper, specialty papers. You can even do muslin or canvas, and in this case I did quite a few of them out of some throwaway little layers of a real lightweight chipboard. It cut beautifully, and in this case I made this gorgeous, very nice, weight to this using the champagne crushed glass glitter. So if all you want to do are things that you can glue down, just simply take some of your white glue, cover the whole surface, and then coat it in the glass glitter. This one is champagne or silver, and this is with the rose fragments. So those are glued. Over here, if you use your Versamark ink to cover the surface, then you can apply some of the embossing powders and then just heat that to get a beautiful finish to the butterfly. So let's take a look how you can do contrasting and interesting colors that will show up against your little journal. But these are really nice to give that interesting sparkle and and shine, and you can place them where they'll be seen the most on the journal pages. These dies will also cut through your metal from soda cans. So I found a lot of interesting colors and patterns to the cans. I took some heavy-duty shears to cut away the top and get a flat panel. And then by taping it in place, I can run it through my die cutting machine. And we'll take the tape off, and here we have a very nice little metal piece, and you might use the colors and pattern that comes on it to begin with, or you can stamp and paint on it and emboss on it and develop a lot of other looks from it. Next, we're going to do some antique embossing, and that's the look you're seeing on this wonderful little book here where I decorated the cover. And I'm going to show you in several steps how we get this look. To start with, we're going to take black paper or whatever surface we want to work on and simply paint it black and give it a complete coat and let that dry so that it gives us a matte black finish. Next, we're going to take a bold design, and our texture cube here is a great example of a nice bold pattern. Versamark ink. I'm working on a piece of metal which helps conduct the heat, holding it down, and a little bit of extra heat is going to give you the most raised impression. So I'm going to take this one that's cooled already, and next we're going to cover it with a pastel paint color. When the paint has dried, just enough to be still kind of damp, that's the best time to take a rough textured cloth of some kind, the crustier the better actually, and that's going to let us scrub away some of the paint. Heat setting it at this point usually isn't helpful, so you need to let it air dry a little bit. So the key with antique embossing is to get the feel of when the paint is just about right to do your gentle scrubbing. And that reveals the pattern coming through from the black underneath. And the deep impression just gave us the raised relief to give us this look of old ceiling tiles or painted tin. So there's just a very fun look for our antique embossing. Let's look at some other ways to embellish your journals and age some ribbons and other trims. Let's say you have some new ribbons and the old ones are expensive, and so you want to take some ribbons that you can buy in the store today, and let's talk about ways to age them down a little bit. Chalks is one way that you can begin to add little bits of color, maybe even some tints of a couple of different colors to work into your color scheme. And even this one that's looking really nice and fresh, maybe we want to kind of tone it down a little bit as well. And you could try some of the coffee spritzing perhaps. A little bit of chalk might do the trick. And in other cases, the colors are just not what you wanted, but you have an interesting pattern. So you can take any of your white paint and simply paint some coating on that to tone it down or take it back to a more of a shabby chic color scheme. and I just hooked it onto something there so that it would stay in place while I worked with it. So you can see how fun it is to take some of your metal pieces, and whether you like them really tarnished with a dark look, or whether you want to do some paint on them, you could take ones like this and do a coat of paint and then wipe some away and get a really nice finish that will work in your whole scheme. And there's so many different fun trims and twine and things that will complete your look. And you can age any and all of them as well. And then another fun tip that I wanted to show you was with your ribbons. You can test and see what kind of ribbon you have, and sometimes heating it is going to be just the thing that helps you shape a bow or antique it. So we're going to take the heat tool, and I've hung on to it here so that we can keep it in view, and we'll just carefully start with some heat and see how far we go. So test a ribbon and see how it looks, but you can get a really nice vintage look right away sometimes by applying a little bit of heat. I want to show you how you can emboss on feathers. And I saw this beautiful photo, and it inspired me to try this out. I don't have any white feathers separate, but I tested it on this one, and we're going to try it on this, and then we're going to be brave and do it on the bird's tail. So I'm going to take my Versamark ink, and I'm going to just get some on the end of the feather, the tips here. Using my spoonful of silver, we're going to coat the end, and we're going to sprinkle a little bit further up as well. Okay, I've got my clip tool ready so that I don't burn my fingers. I'm going to heat from underneath. I do love how the embossing lets you see the filaments of the feathers coming right through, and you can still kind of work with it and get a really beautiful result. On the bird it was a little bit trickier, and I think I've aged the poor thing tremendously here just in the process, but embossing on the edges certainly gives you a very vintage look. And of course you could also do your glue down approach with some glue and some of the glass glitter on an area that wouldn't be so easy to heat. But I had to try all the different options here and let you see how you can emboss on feathers. I wanted to show you how you can get a very nice and simple watercolor effect. For this couple of ones, I got some really nice D'Arches watercolor paper, and I have my painting set that goes way back to who knows when, college I have to admit. And so I'm going to show you a couple different ways to get these soft little bits of color. And as you can see on this one, the really light tones work with the whole Shabby Chic look, and it really is the simplest to color. So on this one, I've actually taped a piece of the watercolor paper onto a piece of acetate just because I wanted to reserve a white edge all the way around. And I'm going to try a couple of different things here just to show you some simple things. So these are my Staedtler color pencils that are the aquarelle. They have a little symbol there of the brush. And if I simply do a little bit of coloring here and there, let's say at the center of the petals, I should then be able to simply take a water brush and we'll test it a little bit over here, and I can begin to move around just that little bit of color. So you can see how simply and quickly you can create a whole soft color palette with just a little bit of minimal coloring. You can always add more color, but try just a little bit at a time and see what look you get. On this side, I started one where I did all of my dark background first, and I've let that dry, and so I can come back in and do a little bit more of my other colors. And ultimately, when I get done and I peel away this tape, I love this, is the favorite part, I can't wait. You peel that away and you get that beautiful white area all the way around the edge that would allow you to frame it. In this case, we've done a torn edge to enjoy putting it into our little Shabby Chic frontage journal. I'll tuck that back on till it finishes. So there we have lots of fun ideas so that you can create your own unique art journal with a frontage look. And you'll see how all of our stamps and embossing powders make it possible for you to make a Stampendous impression every time.